Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're beginning a new week. This is today's Gimel Tammuz special day, day of empowerment, a day of choice. Here we go. Ready? Here's our money. Here's our charity box. As we learned last week, and we're going to continue to learn this week also, some of the implications of Gimel Tammuz. Most recently, it is the day that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was officially released from prison and sent into exile. And 30,000 years before that, it was the year, the date that the sun stood still for Joshua. And in both cases, it was an earth-shaking occurrence, changed all of the laws of nature. But the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Iron Curtain fell. The Iron Curtain fell, and no one dreamed that it could be. And now we have in Gimel Tammuz 31 years ago, whatever it was, the year that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, for all practical purposes, he physically was not found in the world, but we see that it certainly was not true, that the work of the Rebbe and the blessings of the Rebbe and the answers of the Rebbe are even more than they were before that. So it's also changing, a nature-changing thing. Something is happening that's changing all of nature. And just like the sun stopping changed all of nature, and just like this changed all of nature, the previous Rebbe getting out of prison changed all of nature. This also changed nature. But with the Rebbe, it seems that the change is going to be the death is going to go away. There won't be death. How that's going to happen, I have no idea. But it says that before the future redemption, all of the negative things in the world are going to be revealed, which I think we pretty clearly see that in the USA today. Okay, now let's go and learn from this book. The Rebbe said that one of the ways to bring the future redemption is to learn Chassidut. And just by the way, if you think that it's impossible that death should be removed from the world, all the negative things, well, that's how the world is supposed to be. All these negative things like anger and depression and aggression and addictions and disease and things like that, that's all extra stuff. The world can get along really very, very well, much better without those things. So here maybe here's an example. Okay, this week's Torah portion tells the interesting, amazing, and how do you say, problematic story of the copper snake. You ever heard that story? The story of the copper snake. What's the story of the copper snake? I want to make this bigger. Here. How do I do this? The Jewish people started complaining in the desert, which that was their hobby, complaining about God. So, and it still is. Now they complain about other things, but they've almost forgotten about God, but complaining about God. So in the desert, when God was pretty available and revealed, and they could see what God was doing, and that God was giving them bread from heaven, so they started complaining. So the Jewish people were complaining. So God said enough with them, and he sent these weird snakes that when they bit someone, the person would die. And Moses said, how do I stop this? The people came to Moses and said, please stop it. And Moses said to God, what am I supposed to do? So God said, make a snake, like one of these snakes, and put it on a pole. Moses decided on his own to make it from copper. So he made the snake from copper, and he put it on nechushet, it says nechushet, and he put it up on a big pole. And anyone who looked up at the pole, at the snake, would live. So the rabbis say, hey, what happened to God? They're looking up at a snake for. that doesn't make any sense. Look, it's supposed to be anybody who looks up at God will get saved. Huh? What do you mean look up at God? God is everywhere, but the world hides God. the problems come from the world if we don't interpret the world properly. So that's the problems. But from the heavens, there's no problems. So you look up at the heavens and you remember that there's a God and you pray to God. So what do you have to look at a snake for? What's a snake? What's the purpose of the serpent? So the commentators say, no. Moses wanted them to look up at God. So we put the snake up there so that the people would look up at the snake, and the direction of the snake is God. But God is above the snake. So that even makes less sense. What do you, just make an arrow and tell everybody to look up. What do you have to make a snake for? Not only the snake was their problem. The snake was the problem. But the snake was killing everybody. Okay, so let's see what's going on. 1 second. What happened? What did I do here? 1 second. I got the wrong page. 1 second. 1 minute. 1 minute. This is not. We're close, but it's not the right page. Yeah. Okay, no, I don't have the wrong page. Here it is. I got the wrong side of the page. Here we go. Vayas Moshe Nachash Nechoshet. It's in this week's Torah portion, right? Vayas Moshe Nachash Nechoshet. Moses made a snake of copper. By the way, he did it because the words sort of rhyme, right? The Nachash Nechoshet, the same letters. Incidentally, Nachash means the snake, and that's the same snake like that. It's the same word that's used for the snake that convinced Eve and eventually Adam to eat from the tree. Nachash. So it's problematic Nachash. Nachash is the numerical value of Mashiach. Mashiach, numerical value. The same, both of them have the letters Nun, Shin, and Mashiach is a Yud Mem. Yud Mem is the numerical value of 50. This is 50. So now, okay, anyway. So Moses made a copper serpent, and he put it by Yasimeu Alnes, and he put it on a pole. If the snake looked at it bit someone. If the snake bit someone, which means death, V'hi el nachash is the person, instead of dying, would look up at this snake, copper snake, and he would live. The Itav Mishnah, and it says in the Mishnah, in Rosh Hashanah, in the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, on this topic, because Maj Yisrael, when the Jewish people look, Kalapi Maila, they look up in the direction of God, at the heavens, Umishabdim et Libam, and they attach their heart, Lavim Shebeshamayim, to their Father in heaven, then they get cured. For Kasha, and so we have a question. Moses wanted them to look up at God, to forget about themselves, look up a little bit the Creator. Maybe at yourself you look and you understand, my mother and my father created me. But if you look up at the sun, you look up at the sky, who created the sky? Your mother and father created the sky. Who created the moon? Who created the sun? Says, you start to remember, maybe there's God. Maybe I shouldn't complain so much about God. And then they would think about God and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and they would be cured. Right? So Kasha, we got a question. Why do you have to have a snake? Why put a copper snake up there? It should be that if a person was bitten by the serpent, you stakal kalapi maile, look up. You have to have a snake to look up. But what does it mean? You have to look up. You want to see God, you want to look up? Why? Halom of what it explains in prayer, that when you pray, it says your eyes should be on the world below and your heart should be up. Also, there's another big problem here that the Rebbe doesn't say, but one of the universal signs of idolatry. There's a question, it's forbidden to make a form. You're not supposed to make a form. So the rabbis explain, like everything else in the Torah has to be explained properly. That's why you have to have God-fearing rabbis to explain it properly. So they explain that no, what it means not that you can make a form. It's okay to make a form. You can make a form. Here, your house is a form. Everything is a form. Is forbidden. You can make a form. You just can't make a form of certain things, especially like one of the things is especially a serpent, a dracon. That is universally forbidden. Some people say you can't make the sun, you can't make the moon, you can't make a picture of a person's face, a whole face. Some people say a moon is okay, a sun is okay, as long as it doesn't stick out, as long as this. But a serpent, everybody says is bad. So of all the things that Moses said to make a thing, and everybody should look up to look at God, you're looking at a serpent, which is idolatry. This is like, stepping on thin ice over here. Now you can also ask another question: what's so bad about idolatry? Or at least you're looking up. It says, what's bad about idolatry? I mean, first of all, God said it's forbidden. You can't do it. So that's number one. But it's also a little bit logical. I mean, if you look at idolatry, basically what you're doing is looking for yourself. You want to benefit yourself. The whole religion business is what am I going to get? I want to go to heaven. I want to avoid bad. I want to be successful. I. So you're really not worshiping these people who worship all these other religions. They're really essentially worshiping themselves. They're just appealing. They want to get in good with the higher powers, but it's really for themselves. And ideally, what it's supposed to be is that we're supposed to be grateful that we're being created. And we're created for a purpose, and it's not to be selfish. So idolatry is selfishness. That's the problem with idolatry. You're worshiping a creation, and you're making yourself think that maybe there's something else as important as God. And maybe that thing is me. So that's why all idolatry is forbidden. So how could God say to put a serpent, which is idolatry, on a pole, and look at that, exactly the opposite? You should bypass the serpent, forget about the serpent. No, okay. But nevertheless, okay, let's go back to the fact God, in fact, did say make a serpent, and he did say put it on a pole, and he did say that if you look up at this serpent, then you will be healed. And it means, the rabbis explain, that it means that you look up at God. You're looking up to the creator of everything. And that's, so our big question remains, why a serpent? Well, the Havin said, let's understand this. It must be something good, so let's understand. The Havin said, to understand this, Naktin, let's understood the union of, you read it in the Neshama B'olam Hazeh. Why did God put the soul in this world? Now, the soul is a unit of consciousness. The soul, it's your soul. You were alive and conscious before you were born. It was a different type of consciousness. You weren't conscious of physical things because you weren't living in a physical world. It wasn't relevant to you. Just like right now, you're aware of what's going on in Zanzibar. You don't care. You're not there. The same thing is, the soul was not aware of what's going on in this world because it wasn't here. It wasn't in this world. It was in a different dimension, and that was a dimension of spiritual dimension. What's in the spiritual dimension? There's no problems. No problems. God is just creating you, and that's it. You don't have to do anything to keep healthy, to keep you don't get bored. You don't get. It's just you're just aware constantly. You're a big miracle. You're just being created constantly by God, and so is everything. All the other souls, whatever. So you're aware of how lucky you are. Every single instant is like a brand new miracle in the souls in heaven. So it says the souls in heaven, that's perfect. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? That's not the way it's supposed to be. That's the story of the Bible. The Torah tells us that God created the world and he put souls in the world, Adam. And from Adam came everybody. Because the whole purpose of the soul coming into the body is to cling to God with love and fear. So if so, why bring the soul into the world? That's counterproductive. The ikar, the veikut, the main clinging to God, and instead of God, let's substitute the word truth. So in truth, right, if there's something really keeping you alive, so that thing is really valuable. It's really valuable. And if it's not a thing that's keeping you alive, like some sort of a heart-lung machine or whatever, which people are usually not grateful to the machine is not doing anything. But if you say that there's really God really exists, and that God is as real as you are, in fact, more, and God's love is more real than your love. That's where your love comes from. And God's awe and God's consciousness and all of God's aspects, called the 10 Sefirot, are more real than yours are. And you value yourself. You value your eyes and your nose and your power of seeing and your power to be to value things and to limit things and get things done. That's your life. You value your life. So how much more so you should value come to love God. So when the soul is up in heaven, it realizes that its source is coming from God and that God is really real. It's not just some religious, fictitious. You feel the creator, and therefore you have tremendous love and fear. So why put the soul into the physical body in this world? Why in this world? Here you lose your love and fear. The main clinging to God, having love and fear, is in prayer. When you pray to God, what happens? Jewish prayer. You got to get yourself a Jewish prayer book. But mainly you can look in the Psalms of King David. In prayer, a person stops thinking so much about this world, and he starts thinking about the Creator. Shatevot, that the words of prayer, hem yoter karovim, they are closer to your heart of a person of thinking about God. Ubavadai, and certainly kodam tzeta neshama, before the world leaves heaven and comes into this world, hazeh gam achar, and after the soul leaves the world, leaves the body, hu mitabek yoter, you are more, aroused by God, more emotional about God, the love and fear, but penimiut, in a deeper way. Why? Because there's no static, there's no interference. The body does not allow you to serve God. Exactly the opposite. Because of the physicality of the body, it forces the soul to get pleasure from physical things, right? You put into the soul, all of a sudden you get this new thing, hungry. A baby is born. What's the first thing he does? He cries. Baby cries. What's he crying for? He's hungry. He's hungry. Sometimes they have to hit the baby, right? To clear his lungs, whatever they do. He has to breathe. All of a sudden he comes into the world and he needs things. Who provides what he needs? Not God, his mother. In heaven, God provided everything. You didn't get hungry. God was always creating and enlivening the soul. But there's no problem with breathing, no problem with eating. Comes into the world, all of a sudden, baby wants food. Where does the food come from? From his mother. Comes from his mother. How does breathing come from? The doctor hits him, whatever. He needs the air around the world. Has to breathe. In heaven, there was no problem with breathing. Nobody could choke you. But Afki and Neshama, the soul itself doesn't want to be in a body. Ki mokar chutzva, it wants its source where it is, a source from God alone. Ratzono, and the soul, the desire of the soul, lidabak beboro. All he wants to do, the soul just wants to be coming close, just total appreciation of the Creator, to get closer to the Creator. That's the soul. That's what the soul wants. Nothing more valuable than that. It's explained in the Zohar, man the lo mahapech meriru mitzka, a person that does not, in the Zohar. Zohar is a Kabbalistic book which explains the sentences of the Torah in a Kabbalistic way. So the Zohar, it says the man the lo, it's written in Aramaic. Man the lo, one that does not, it was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai when that was in time of exile. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in Israel. He lived in Israel, but it was the time of exile. Most Jews spoke Aramaic. So it says, man the lo mahapech meril misku, one that did not transform bitterness to sweetness, late lechulka, he's got no portion, the high alma in this world, in heaven at all. Okay, so first of all, God never remains a debtor. So a person that does good things, God always pays him. A Jew, non-Jew, they always get paid. But then there's a special thing which is called heaven. This is a special super prize that a person who does what God wants, as he gets the super duper prize, which is called heaven, the revelations of heaven. And it says this can only come from one who transforms darkness to light. Now the souls, as they are in heaven, they don't get this because they have not transformed anything. They haven't got it. There's no challenges. This is the essence of man. Lone Nivra, a person was only born, created for this, to transform darkness to light. That's the story of the Bible. God creates a world and he puts man in the world and says, fix up the world. And man, the world overpowers man. Man. And so the generations go, the generation of the flood, then it comes Abraham. Abraham was the first person that really devoted himself to this job of transforming darkness to light. Everyone else was, to various degrees, was conquered by the darkness. Darkness means yourself, creation, and to give yourself over to what the purpose of creation. That was what Abraham did. Okay. So we have this purpose now. That's the purpose of the Jewish people, is to inform the world that we are in this physical world in order to perfect this physical world. And a consolation prize is you go to heaven in the meantime. Eventually, all death will stop and there won't be any more heaven. But until then, the souls are in this world. And our job is to transform the darkness of this world, the idolatry, the selfishness of this world, to light. Light means thinking only about God, not think about yourself. Hari, that's also another pitfall, right? So God makes this thing called heaven. Let's see, one second. Excuse me. I didn't see that you were waiting. It was behind one of these signs over there. But you in? Yes. Okay, good. Good morning. Okay. God has this thing called heaven, right? So you go to heaven. Heaven is great. So that's also a big, stumbling block. Heaven, because people can live in this world, and some people get this. They read in the books there's such thing as heaven. So they say, "Wow, I'm going to do in the world. I'm going to do what's right because I want to go to heaven." Okay, so at least you're doing what's right, but you're doing it for the wrong reason, even though it's a spiritual reason. But the reason that Abraham discovered is don't do things for heaven. Don't do things, even heaven is yourself. You're doing it for yourself. There was big tzaddikim before Abraham. There was Noah, there was Shelach, but to a certain degree, they didn't do only for God. They didn't, which is almost impossible, right? But nevertheless, that's the way God made the world. So our job is to transform darkness, namely selfishness, to light. So some doing even for the sake of going to heaven, that's also a type of darkness. Okay, but nevertheless, you do get this prize of heaven. It's something like saying a doctor, if you're a really good doctor, so you can get like $1 million for an operation. But genuinely, a really good doctor is supposed to be. But being a doctor is not the same thing as Judaism, because your motives are not so important. The main thing is you could be a Nazi. If you heal people, so you get paid. You get paid. So the main thing of a doctor is to be able to heal people. We don't care about his intentions. But ideally, a doctor is supposed to be interested only in health. That's what he's interested in. And a lawyer is supposed to be interested only in justice. And if you're good, you get money, but you don't care about the money. The money is a secondary thing. Same thing also, life is supposed to be like that way. You're supposed to be interested only in truth, not to think about yourself at all. The less you think about yourself, the happier you are. Okay, so if so, why did God put us in this world where this world is just screaming at us every single instant? Think about yourself. You better worry. You better be afraid. You like this, eat like Alice in Wonderland. Eat me, drink me. So why did God do this? It says the whole man was put into the world only for this, to transform darkness to light. Shari Bebayad Rishon, in the first temple, Loyam Mitpalalim, they weren't praying. They didn't used to pray at all. They said Shema Yisrael, but they didn't used to. Also in the second temple, the men of the Great Assembly, they made that you should say a short prayer. Ubavad, I certainly call Avodah Shalem. Their service was was only for this, to transform darkness, bitterness to sweetness. Okay, so what are we supposed to do here in this world? What's the world? The idea is to transform bitterness to sweetness. The Indian is like this. It is possible to transform bad to good, evil to righteousness, death to life. Possible. How can we do this? You got to get to the source. Hadinim, severe things, severities in this world, nimtakin b'shosham, can be fixed up from their source. The source. The source of everything is God. So all the bad things in the world are being created by God. And a person can make a mistake and say, well, if God is creating it, he knows what he's doing, so I'm going to go for it. So therefore, God gave the Torah. And the Torah told us that, listen, there's a reason why God is creating bad things in the world. And the reason is that you should transform them. How do you transform them? Now you got to get personal. Now it's not a religious thing anymore. You have to really, truly devote yourself to the truth, and you have to believe that it's the truth. Forget about this thing of heaven. Heaven. It could be the truth, So that I remember in someone, there's this, what is it? Who is it? Anyway, one of these apologists for religion, he said you should do what is right? You should do the commandments or believe like we believe, because if you do, you'll go to heaven, and if you don't, you go to hell. And just on the doubt, maybe I'm going to go to hell, so it's worthwhile to do good. I remember there was a class on this in university. I raised my hand. I don't understand. I said, I don't understand. To me, that seems to me the most stupid thing in the world. If I wasn't religious at all. It was in university. I said, if I live my life on just this doubt that maybe I'm going to go to heaven, and maybe if I don't, I'll go to hell, and it's worthwhile to invest it in this, so it ends up that I wrecked my whole life up. I lived my whole life on just this paranoia about the afterworld. So I mean, I messed up my whole life. I lived, it's like there's a boogeyman in the corner or something like that. Maybe there is, don't take any chances. Don't open that door, don't open that door. Don't leave your room, don't get out of bed, because maybe as soon as you put your foot down, then he's going to jump out and eat your foot. So, don't take any chances. And that's ridiculous. That makes no sense. So you have to be genuine. You have to genuinely think, is there really a creator? Does he really care? And then stop thinking about yourself. Why am I being created? Okay, but all evil, the dinim, God forbid, shenithavu, that are created in this world, shorsham, their source and their origin, which enlivens them and creates them, is good. Kamashala zona, like the example of the prostitute in Ben Amelech, with the son of the king, Hamavur, which is explained in the Zohar. What's the story of the zona, of the prostitute in the book the Zohar? What's the story? What's the story in the Zohar? With the son of the king. So the story goes like this: the son of the king has a son, right? And the king started to get older, and he doesn't have any other children. So he wants to see, and he loves his country. The king loves his country, and he loves the inhabitants and the citizens. He loves them with all of his soul, but he realizes he's getting old, the king. And he's got his son. His son's going to be the prince. The prince, he's going to be the next king. So the king knows that there's such a thing as bad kings. And he also knows that one of the ways to turn a person bad, a good person bad, is to give him power. How to say power corrupts? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. You give now he's going to be giving one day his son absolute power. What is his son made of? Right? Maybe he has to find out. Maybe his son is weak. Maybe he has a flaw, some sort of Achilles heel or something like that. That he has, some people it's money, some people it's this. So anyway, so his main thing, the way he tested his son, I guess he saw that his son was honest with money. But what about with sex? What about with women? People go berserk. People go crazy with sex. Makes them go berserk. Go. They go crazy. They get a little bit of pleasure, and they go after it. There was this experiment that I forget who made it, and they implanted these electrodes in the brains of rats, and they figured out in the place in the rat's brain where if they stimulated it with a little bit of electricity, a small, very, very super low current, that it would stimulate the brain and give the rat pleasure. Everybody knows this thing. And so they did it, the experiment always worked 100%. And they had a little lever, and the rat would hit this lever, and it would, at arbitrary times, sometimes he hit it twice, sometimes 10 times, sometimes 20 times, and it would give him this pleasure in his brain. It was the same pleasure as he would get from having sexual relations with a woman rat, a female rat, or from like if he's really hungry and getting eat pleasure, he got pleasure, so he would hit them. It ended up that the rat would get stuck. He would get addicted to this pleasure, and he would hit it, 10, 15 times, and he would be, and they would put food over there, and he would be hungry. They would put a female rat there, right? And he hadn't had any, the sexual relationships for like a week, whenever it is. I don't, however rats are, right? And he wouldn't eat the food, and he wouldn't go for the female rat. He wanted this pleasure. The pleasure drove him crazy, right? And sexual pleasure drives a person crazy. So he said, okay, that's how I'm going to test my son, says the king. At those times, they didn't have electrodes. They didn't have those things, right? But genuinely, if the king, if they did have electrodes, so he would put one of those electrodes with one of those things, and he'd say, okay, either be the king and lead the people or have pleasure. And he would stop hitting the thing. He said, I want to have, okay, but they didn't have any electrodes back then. So what did he do? The king, he got a prostitute that was exactly according to what his son likes, right? His son likes 5'2", eyes of blue, whatever it is. That's what his son likes. According to one opinion, he got a prostitute to hire another prostitute, so that the last one that's being hired doesn't really know that she's working for the king. Okay, whatever it is. So the son wouldn't get any hint what's going on. Okay, what does the king want? The king wants that his son should control himself, should defy his urges, and he should act in a royal way. But on the other hand, it has to be a genuine test. So he has to send a woman that's really, really seductive, and she knows, exactly how to do it. Can you excuse me, sir? Can you tell me what time it is or something like that? And then little by little lure him into her web of seduction, right? And someone that really knows how to do it. And so we got this prostitute. So what the king wants is that he should defy his own urges and his own, they say, lusts. That's what the king wants. And it would also be for the benefit of the prince if he defied his own lusts. And according to some opinions, even the prostitute, she also wants him to defy his lust, but she has to just do a good job. She has to do a good job. If she gives him any hint that this is just a test, so he looks at the thing objectively, then it's not a test anymore. It's not a test. So she does everything that she can to this. So everybody wants the king's son to defy his urges, except for the king's son's urges. His urges are, why not? Come on, let's just go for it. Just stop thinking like they said the Nazis said, the SS, think with your thighs, think with your arms, don't think, just go for it, just do whatever you want to do, right? So it says, but it's the same thing. God puts us in this world. He's the king, and we're his sons, and God put the world in our hands. So God gives us our selfish impulses. That's the prostitute over here, to lure us. And it's very hard for us to imagine that our desires are something separate from us. That's me, right? My desires. It's not really the real you. The real you wants to serve God. Oh yeah, but I don't want to serve God. It says that, no, now you've been conquered by your false you. That's not I. That's not I. Your real you has a problem with your desires, with the desires, right? The desires are not you. Shekol Ratzona, that the whole desire of this prostitute, that the king's son should not listen to her. And this she will get pleasure more than the king's son, and also she will be loved by the king, which is not the case if she would succeed in seducing the king's son, and she would conquer him. The king is not happy. The king's son would not be happy. At least he would be temporarily happy, but he would lose his job. He loses his integrity. He loses honor, his decency, and everything. But he doesn't care. That's what the king wants to see. Is my son going to give into his carnal, stupid, low desires, as pleasing as they may be, satisfying as they may be, or is he going to be a king? What's it going to be? It says that's the whole idea. That says Satan v'Penina l'shem shamayim nitkavnu. It says Satan and Penina. That's actually two aspects of Satan. But Penina was the other wife of, what was it, Elkanah. The whole story with Ruth and Elkanah. And Penina, she said, why don't you have any children? No, I'm sorry, Hannah. I made a mistake. Hannah. She was the co-wife. This person, Elkanah, he had two wives. One of them was Hannah, and she eventually gave birth to Shmuel Hanavi, who was the one who anointed King David. And Penina used to make trouble for her all the time. So it says both Satan and Penina, the Shem Shemayim Nikavnu. Both the devil and Penina, even though that ostensibly they were very evil and they want people to do bad things, right? Penina wanted Hannah to feel really bad, but nevertheless, they really intended for the sake of heaven. Like it says, Omru, Natan Emod Mikdash, Rishon V'achribo. It says that the devil put his eyes on the first temple and he destroyed it. Why did he destroy it? Mashra Shenit Kanebo. He was jealous. He was jealous of the first temple. People weren't serving God the way they were supposed to be, and therefore he destroyed the first temple. He had permission to destroy the first temple. In other words, that the devil wants us to defy him. The devil is egotism. The devil is called the angel of death. The devil is the power of evil in the world, whatever. But it's a power. God created it, and it's very real. And we see from the world what's going on. The Inyanu is like the Sheshorish Ra, the source of evil in the world. Hamachayel is really good. Like it says in the Zohar, Sham over there, the key yesh of the Marid B'Mare, can there be a servant that really rebels against his master? If the master is creating the servant, so how can the servant create Hagam sheyesh kama avadim shemit partzim, even though there are a lot of servants that go against their master, but these what's called physical servants. What's the Zohar talking about? Is there a servant that can go against his master? It's talking about that as long as we feel that God is the master, we can't go against him. Avdi Hashem, one who is a servant of God, Shemakablim Chayosef, that receive their life from him, and he enlivens us. That's a call. Eich yesh chayut l'davar. How can there be power for something against him? And so it gives the answer that yes, God is creating everything. God is really good. Oh yeah, really? So why do I have this desire to do all the things, the prohibitions in the Torah? I have a big desire to do it. But why? It says because that's the Zohar. Their Zohar answers that's the thing of the prostitute. God wants to try us. He wants to see what we're made of. Huh? Okay, so essentially what the Rebbe is saying, that every bad thing in the world, everything in the world, comes from God, in a way, especially the bad things do. Because other good things do, that just, gives us an easy life. And the bad things, that's the reason that we're here, is in order to transform them. If it wasn't for the bad things, there wouldn't be a world. God would just suffice with the angels, or the souls in heaven, where there's no challenges. So therefore, God makes the world with bad in it, and God's purpose is not that we should leave the world. That's also a big mistake, because that's also selfish. God wants us to be in the world and to fix up the world, and in order to do that, we have to transform bad to good, and that can only be done if we always remember our source. And this we'll talk about, God willing, tomorrow. Okay, now, that's why I said Nachash. This Nachash is the numerical value of Mashiach. So, okay, let's stop the share. Stop.